Blind date gone wrong? The waitress spilled coffee on him, not knowing he owned the restaurant. The lunch crowd had just thinned out, but the smell of roasted coffee beans and buttered bread still lingered in the air. The chatter of customers blended with the hum of soft jazz from the ceiling speakers. Behind the counter, Emily tightened her apron, the faint curls of her blonde hair slipping loose from the clip she had hastily pinned. "Emily," her manager barked, snapping his fingers toward a messy table near the window. "We're short-staffed today. Don't drift off. And remember, smile." She smiled automatically, though her heart was somewhere else entirely. It was her first blind date in years. Her best friend had arranged it after weeks of teasing her about never taking time for herself. "His name's Daniel," her friend had said. "He's calm, kind, maybe a little serious, but trust me, you'll like him." Emily had laughed it off, but curiosity, mixed with a bit of loneliness, had won. She took a deep breath and approached her manager. Could I take an early break today? Just 1 hour, please. It's important." The manager raised a brow. "Important? We're drowning, Emily." "I'll stay late to clean after close," she promised quickly. He sighed, waving a dismissive hand. 1 hour. But if I see you chatting while tables pile up, you're done here." "Thank you," she said, her gratitude genuine. She darted into the restroom, heart pounding, and changed into a plain ivory dress she had tucked in her bag. It wasn't glamorous, just soft fabric and a hope for something simple. She looked at herself in the mirror, brushed her hair, and whispered, "You can do this." The restaurant wasn't fancy, but under the warm afternoon light, it felt intimate, amber reflections dancing across the glassware. A man sat at a table near the center, glancing at his watch. Dark hair, neatly combed, white shirt, calm expression. That had to be him. Emily clutched the tray tighter, palms sweating. Her plan was simple. Bring him coffee, introduce herself, and maybe, if she didn't panic, start a real conversation. But as she approached, nerves tangled in her chest. Her heel caught on the carpet edge, the cup tilted. Hot liquid splashed forward before she could react. The coffee streamed across the man's sleeve and chest, soaking into the crisp white cotton of his shirt. Time froze. Gasps rippled from nearby tables. Emily's face went pale. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I didn't see. I mean..." She fumbled for a napkin, blotting the shirt uselessly. "Please, let me. I can fix." The man looked down at the stain, then back at her, and, unexpectedly, laughed softly. "It's okay," he said, voice even, almost amused. Then, with a tiny shrug, he added, "Well, at least it wasn't soup." The corners of his mouth lifted, warm and teasing. Emily froze, caught between horror and disbelief. A nervous giggle slipped out before she could stop it. I think I just broke the first rule of a good impression." "You definitely made one," he said, still smiling. She blinked. "Wait, you're not mad?" He shook his head lightly, pulling a napkin from the holder and dabbing his sleeve. "I've had worse meetings. At least this one smells like coffee." Her heart thudded unevenly. Maybe it was the way he spoke, gentle, steady, or maybe the simple grace with which he handled her disaster. "I'm really not usually this clumsy," she murmured. "That's good to know," he said, his tone calm but curious. He studied her face for a moment, eyes kind, voice low. "Are you Emily?" Her breath caught. "Yes," she said, barely above a whisper. "Then," he said, setting his napkin aside and gesturing toward the seat across from him, "why don't we start again?" She hesitated, glancing toward the counter where her manager was watching with a scowl. But Daniel's voice broke through her anxiety, patient and inviting. "Sit down," he said. "Let's make it the best 1-hour date we can." For a second, she forgot about the spilled coffee, the reprimands, the chaos of the day. She only saw his easy smile, his calm eyes. And when she finally sat, cheeks still burning, Daniel leaned back, half grinning. "See?" he said softly. "Perfect start. We've already survived the worst part." Emily laughed, the sound shaky but real. And for the first time that day, she felt the rush of something unexpected, like hope, disguised as a cup of coffee gone wrong. The first few minutes were all awkward smiles and stolen glances. Emily still felt the heat of embarrassment in her cheeks as she folded her hands tightly on her lap. The coffee spill had soaked into Daniel's shirt, but not once had he looked annoyed. That alone made her more nervous. Who was this man, and why was he so calm? Daniel leaned back in his chair and offered a half smile. "You know," he said, lightly tapping the rim of his empty coffee cup, "most dates don't begin with hot beverages being weaponized." Emily let out a soft laugh. "I'm so sorry." Again. He shook his head gently. "Actually, I kinda liked the honesty of it." She blinked. "Honesty?" He shrugged. "It was real. No pretending, no perfect smiles or memorized lines. Just a very real moment." He grinned. "Besides, it made you unforgettable." Emily smiled, relaxing a little. For the first time, she noticed how his eyes softened when he looked at her, not judging, just curious. "So," he said, "what do you do when you're not practicing your coffee-throwing skills?" That made her laugh again. "I'm a full-time student, studying business, and I work part-time here, obviously. I also help out at a bakery early in the mornings, and do online tutoring in the evenings when I can." Daniel raised an eyebrow. "That's a lot." "Yeah," Emily said, stirring her water with a straw. "Tuition's no joke, rent either. And I've got this dream of opening my own bakery someday. A small place, nothing fancy, just fresh bread, warm coffee, good smells." Daniel leaned in slightly, genuinely interested. "That sounds amazing. What kind of pastries?" Her face lit up. "Croissants, and cinnamon rolls, and apple hand pies in the fall. My mom used to make those every October." "Used to?" "She passed away 3 years ago," Emily said softly. "Cancer." Daniel's expression shifted, tender and understanding. "I'm sorry." Emily nodded, her voice steady. "Thanks. I think I bake partly because of her. It's like a way to keep her close." There was a short silence, not uncomfortable, just thoughtful. "And you still smile through all of that," Daniel murmured. Emily looked at him, brow slightly raised. "Why wouldn't I?" He tilted his head. "I mean, juggling 3 jobs, school, loss, it's a lot." She gave him a small smile, tired but genuine. "Because I'm still here." The words hung between them, simple but strong. Daniel looked at her with something unreadable in his eyes. Respect, maybe, or awe. "Have you always been this strong?" he asked quietly. Emily chuckled. "No, but I've had a lot of practice." He leaned back, his fingers tracing the edge of his glass. "I know a little about rebuilding," he said after a pause. She glanced up. "Oh?" He nodded. "I ran a business once. It failed spectacularly. Lost almost everything. Had to start over from scratch. Took years." She didn't push for details, and he didn't offer more, but somehow it felt like enough, like he was giving her a glimpse of a scar, not to impress her, but to connect. "I guess we're both survivors," Emily said. Daniel met her eyes. Maybe that's why this coffee accident felt right. They both laughed, this time easily, freely. A waitress passed by, giving Emily a wink. Daniel noticed and smiled. "You know," he said, "this might be the most honest first date I've ever had." Emily rested her chin on her hand, playfully skeptical. "Because I threw coffee on you?" "Because you didn't try to hide anything." She felt a strange warmth settle in her chest, not romance, not yet, but something like trust, like recognition. Maybe, just maybe, this date wasn't a disaster after all. They met again in the soft glow of the restaurant's evening light. On a weekday, Daniel made a reservation under a nondescript name. Emily, working her usual shift, recognized the coat hanging by the entrance, but told herself it must be someone else. She moved through the dining room, carrying trays, filling glasses of water, offering soft smiles, greeting familiar faces. She caught sight of him in a booth near the back corner. He was seated alone, casually reading a menu, glancing at the kitchen pass now and then. She forced herself to breathe normally and carry on. When a party of 6 squeezed into the next table and a child dropped crumbs on the floor, Emily darted over to clean it. Daniel watched her quick footsteps, the gentle way she knelt, ensuring no spill lingered. As he watched, he saw more. She paused by an empty table once and returned leftover rolls to the kitchen quietly. She slipped a half-eaten sandwich into a to-go container for someone sitting outside. He saw how she spoke softly to an older man who hovered near the door, someone who looked hungry. She offered him bread with a nod and a reassuring smile. One evening, a customer at the table next to hers slammed his hand on the table. "This dish is cold. How long have you been cooking this?" he snapped at Emily. Her face blanched. She opened her mouth to apologize, stammering. Before she could scurry away, Daniel stood from his seat. He cleared his throat. "Sir, please, she's doing her best." His voice was calm, firm, not dramatic, just direct. The restaurant quieted for a moment. The angry patron hesitated, muttered, then backed down. Emily froze, eyes wide, mouth slightly open. She looked toward Daniel, astonished. She had not expected her accidental date to become her defender. He returned to his seat as though nothing happened, yet she felt something shift in the air between them. After his intervention, patrons resumed their conversation. The piano resumed its soft melody, and the hum of chairs sliding murmured through the room. But Emily's mind raced. Did he really risk that? In his anonymity, in a public place, he did not call attention to himself. He did not demand thanks. He simply stood and quietly defended her. In the days that followed, she found him again at the booth. She pretended not to notice, but he caught her eye through the glass partition. He nodded. She nodded back, heart fluttering. Sometimes she found herself glancing toward the booth even before she walked into work. Did he come tonight? Would he be watching her? One afternoon, during a lull in service, she passed by the manager's office on a raised hallway. She heard Daniel's voice, low, serious, speaking with the floor manager. She paused at the doorway, peeking inside. He spoke in firm yet quiet tones, about scheduling, staff training, supply orders. There were papers with logos she recognized from the restaurant's letterhead. His posture was more commanding than he had ever shown her at their tables. Her heart hammered. She backed away quietly, but the seed of doubt was planted. He was not just a customer. He was something more. That night, as she left the restaurant in the dusk, she looked once more through the windows. She saw him still seated in the booth, watching her. The candlelight flickered across his face. He stood briefly when their eyes met. He gave a small, respectful nod, then returned to his seat. She turned away, breath ragged, mind swirling. Was it possible that the man who defended her, who smiled gently, was also the one making decisions behind those closed doors? Was he the kind of man she might never reach? Still, she couldn't shake the warmth she felt when he spoke up for her. The way he looked at her, not like a patron to service staff, but like someone truly noticing. And though doubt crept in, a flicker of hope remained in her chest. Perhaps the man in the corner booth was not just part of the background, but someone who might become the foreground of her story. That night, she carried that possibility home, holding it close, fragile, and brimming with questions. The morning had started like any other, until it didn't. Emily climbed the narrow staff stairs, a small folded form in her hand. She needed to request a shift change for her final exams, and dreaded the conversation with her always strict manager. The hallway to the office was usually quiet at this hour. But today, voices leaked through the closed door. Familiar voices. She paused. Overall, profit margins are up 12% this quarter. The only concern is staffing. We may need to adjust training in the downtown location. That voice, calm, deliberate. Daniel. Emily froze, barely breathing. Another voice, her manager's, responded. Understood, Mr. Carter. We'll begin the assessments next week. Mr. Carter? Emily's heart dropped. No, it couldn't be. She inched closer, and through the small glass window of the office door, she saw him. Daniel. Dressed sharply, standing at the head of the table, pointer in hand, flipping through slides on a screen with the restaurant's logo. Her fingers tightened around the paper in her hand, her stomach twisted. She turned and walked away without knocking, forgetting all about the shift form, about exams, about everything except the heavy thud of betrayal. That evening, when Daniel showed up again, this time sitting at their booth, Emily approached without her usual warmth. No smile, no polite check-in. He noticed instantly. Emily? You're the owner? She asked, voice low but sharp. And you didn't tell me? Daniel's expression shifted from calm to cautious. I wanted to. You let me think you were just some guy who liked overpriced pasta, she continued, hurt boiling beneath her tone. You watched me hustle. You saw customers yell at me. You knew everything. Daniel stood. Can we talk somewhere private? She didn't move. Why? So you can control the narrative again? He exhaled. It wasn't about control. I didn't want to change the way you look at me. Emily crossed her arms, struggling to steady her voice. Then what was it about? Some test? No, nothing like that, Daniel said, his voice softening. Emily, a few years ago there were rumors. I was involved, briefly, with someone who worked for one of my restaurants. We were both consenting adults, but the press didn't care. She lost her job. People said she was using me. She got threats online. It ruined her. Emily's lips parted, but no words came. I promised myself, Daniel continued, I'd never let that happen again. Not to anyone, especially not to someone who, he hesitated, someone who mattered to me. Her walls threatened to crack under the weight of his sincerity, but her pride held firm. So, your solution was to lie? She asked. To wait, Daniel said, to earn your trust, to figure out if this was real without my name being the reason you said yes. She stared at him, eyes brimming with conflict. He added quietly, and it was real, every moment. Silence fell between them. Emily took a small step back. I don't know what to feel, Daniel. You say it was real, but how can I believe that when the foundation was a secret? Daniel nodded slowly. You have every right to feel that way. I'm not asking for forgiveness tonight. Just honesty. The same honesty you gave me from day one. Emily looked away, blinking fast. She remembered the first spill, the laughter, the warmth of their connection. It had felt pure, but now it was tangled in layers of omission. I need time, she said finally. Daniel nodded. I'll wait. As she walked away, he didn't follow. And for the first time since their first chaotic meeting, the space between them felt impossibly wide. The chaos started with a single photo. An anonymous food blog, usually reserved for restaurant reviews and latte art posts, published a blurry image of Emily and Daniel walking side by side outside the restaurant after closing. Emily was smiling, looking up at him. He had his hands in his pockets, listening intently. The photo wasn't scandalous, no hand-holding, no kisses, but the caption was a knife. Exclusive. CEO Daniel Carter spotted with Waitress. Is this more than dinner? The blog exploded overnight. Comment sections filled with speculation and nastiness. Words like affair, gold digger, and abuse of power flew freely. It didn't matter that Emily was barely 23, or that Daniel had done nothing inappropriate. In the eyes of strangers, she became a villain, in someone else's drama. By the next morning, whispers filled the restaurant. She must have known who he was all along. One server murmured near the coffee station. She's just playing the innocent card, another added. Emily felt the shift immediately. Tables turned quiet when she passed. Friendly greetings were replaced by side eyes and sudden silences. Even the manager, who once joked with her during slow hours, avoided eye contact. That afternoon, she was called into the office. "We're getting heat from corporate," the manager said, trying to sound sympathetic but failing. "It might be best if you take some time off, just until things cool down." Emily stood still. "So I'm being punished for walking next to someone?" "It's not punishment," he said quickly. "Just a precaution." "A precaution?" She forced a nod, took off her apron, and walked out through the back door, blinking hard against the sudden brightness of the Sunday. Later that night, Daniel texted her. "Daniel, we need to talk. I want to go public, set the record straight." Emily didn't respond right away. She sat on her small couch, staring at her phone, her reflection faint in the black screen. When she finally agreed to meet him at the quiet booth they'd once claimed as their own, the place felt colder. She arrived without makeup, hair tied back, dressed in a worn gray hoodie. Daniel was already there, in his usual navy coat, concern etched across his face. "Emily," he began, standing up. She sat without a word. "I hate what they're saying," he said softly. "None of it is true. I can release a statement. We can show." Emily shook her head. "I don't want to be a headline," she interrupted. Daniel blinked. "But you're not." "I am," she said, voice breaking. "I'm the girl who got close to the CEO. The girl people think used someone. I can feel them watching me, talking behind my back." He reached for her hand, but she gently pulled away. "I just wanted to be enough," she whispered. "Just me, not someone who needed your name to matter." Daniel looked down, pain shadowing his face. "You are enough. Always have been." She gave him a sad smile. "But I don't feel like myself anymore. This thing between us, it's beautiful, but it's also heavy, and I don't know how to carry it without losing myself." He said nothing for a long moment, then finally asked, "So, what are you saying?" Emily folded her hands in her lap. "I need space, not forever. Just until I can find solid ground again." Daniel swallowed hard. "I understand. I don't want you to fix this," she added. "Not with your name. Not with money. I need to know who I am outside of all this." He nodded slowly, eyes shining but unwavering. "And I'll be here, however long it takes." Emily stood, took one last look at him, then walked out into the evening air. For the first time, it wasn't about love, or anger, or fear. It was about her, about choosing to hold on to her dignity, her dreams, and her voice. Even if it meant stepping away from the person who made her heart race. For now, Emily had never expected the quiet warmth of the little bakery to feel like home. After leaving the restaurant and the chaos that followed, she took a job at a small, family-owned pastry shop tucked between two old bookstores. The pay was modest, but the atmosphere was calm, and the scent of butter and sugar filled every morning with a strange kind of hope. The owner's 7-year-old niece, a little girl in a pink dress who spent her afternoons curled up in the corner with a picture book, quickly took a liking to Emily. One afternoon, as Emily was cleaning the display case, the little girl tugged gently on her apron and whispered, "There's a man with curly hair who comes in when you're not here." Emily turned, confused. "Really?" The girl nodded with a secretive grin. "He reads me stories, and he says, 'You're the most wonderful person he's ever met.'" Emily froze, her heart, bruised and cautious, fluttered with something that felt dangerously like hope. "Did he say his name?" The girl shook her head. "But he smells like coffee and wears nice shoes." Emily smiled, but her hands trembled slightly as she returned to work. The next morning, there was a fresh bouquet of peonies in a simple glass vase sitting at the edge of the counter. No note, no explanation. Just the kind of flowers Emily had once mentioned loving in a conversation she thought no one remembered. Then came the next surprise. 2 days later, the shop received a delivery, a state-of-the-art convection oven. The owner was baffled. There was no invoice, no request for payment. Just a note that said, "For the sweet beginnings you'll bake." Emily stared at the sleek, gleaming machine, her chest tightening with recognition. It had to be him. It had to be Daniel. She asked the delivery man who had sent it, but he shrugged. "Anonymous donation," he said. By the end of the week, high-quality baking ingredients, premium chocolate, Madagascar vanilla, European butter, appeared in their pantry. The label on one of the packages had a tiny coffee stain. Emily didn't say anything. She couldn't. She wasn't ready to name the ache she still carried, or the pull that hadn't left her since walking away from Daniel. And then, one cloudy afternoon, the little girl ran up to her, beaming, and held out a small envelope. "It's from the man with the nice shoes," she said. "He asked me to give it to you." Emily took the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a single sheet of paper, handwritten, neat, familiar. "Emily, I know you never needed saving. That's not why I did any of this. I just wanted to remind you what you've always been capable of. I hope the oven helps. I hope the flowers made you smile. And I hope you're still smiling. From the man who still believes in you." Emily pressed the letter to her chest, the tears falling before she could stop them. She didn't cry because she was sad. She cried because someone, somewhere, still chose her. Not loudly, not grandly, but in the little things. She folded the letter carefully and placed it in the notebook where she kept her recipes. Her dream of owning a bakery still felt far away, but now, for the first time in a long time, it didn't feel impossible. And in the quiet hum of the new oven and the rustling petals of the peonies by the window, she could almost hear his voice again. "You're the most wonderful person I've ever met." She smiled through her tears, because she was still here. The little table sat by the front window, same place Emily liked to sit during her breaks. That evening, the bakery was quiet, the lights soft and warm. Grace had locked up early, handing Emily a mysterious note that simply read, "Table for 2." Emily walked out from the kitchen, apron off, heart pounding. The door chimed. Daniel was already seated. No cameras, no suits, no curated speeches, just Daniel, in a worn navy sweater, his curly hair slightly messier than usual, eyes both nervous and warm. On the table was a small paper bag. Inside, Emily found a soft linen napkin, carefully folded. As she opened it, her breath caught. Delicately embroidered in dark blue thread were the words, "Because I'm still here." She looked up, eyes already shimmering. Daniel stood slowly. "I had that stitched the day you left," he said, "because I didn't want the last thing you remembered about me to be my name or my job." He took a breath, stepping closer. "I was afraid you'd leave if you knew who I was," he continued, voice quieter. "But the truth is, I've never wanted to be anyone else than the man you spilled coffee on." Emily let out a teary laugh. "Then you're lucky I was clumsy." They both smiled, the kind of smile that came after storms. Daniel gestured to the table. "Will you sit?" No expectations. Just 2 people, 1 table. She nodded, her fingers tightening around the embroidered napkin as she took the seat across from him. The silence between them was comfortable, filled with everything they didn't have to explain anymore. Daniel looked down, then back at her. "You made me feel seen," he said, "not as a CEO, not as someone with control, just as a man who really liked a girl with flour on her nose and stories in her eyes." Emily shook her head, a small smile curling at her lips. "You made me feel like I wasn't a headline, like I was allowed to just be." "I never wanted to fix you," Daniel added, I just wanted to be there when you figured out how strong you already were. She reached across the table, fingers brushing his. You were, she said, and in that small bakery, under the gentle lights, there were no cameras, no whispers, no questions about who deserved what. Just a man and a woman who had walked through misunderstandings, distance, and doubt, and somehow found each other again. As the lights dimmed and the city outside softened into night, Emily whispered, I still don't have it all figured out. Daniel smiled. Good, neither do I. But we can figure it out, together. This time, she didn't pull away. A soft autumn breeze rustled the red ribbon tied across the bakery door. The windows were adorned with golden lettering. Emily's Place, where every spill is a sweet beginning. A small crowd gathered outside, holding cups of warm cider and cinnamon rolls fresh from the oven. Inside, the scent of vanilla and toasted almonds wrapped around everyone like a warm hug. It had taken a year of early mornings, late nights, and one secret investor who never once asked for credit. Emily stood by the counter, her blonde hair tied back in a loose bun, cheeks pink with nerves and joy. Grace hugged her tightly. Lily, now in a frilly pink dress, danced between the guests, proudly holding a sign with glittery letters. Where every spill is a sweet beginning. A local reporter, jotting notes beside a cameraman, approached Emily with a curious smile. Why open a bakery now? The woman asked. And why this name? Emily glanced toward the window, where Daniel stood quietly near the display case, letting the spotlight stay far from him. Their eyes met. He smiled softly. Emily turned back to the reporter, her voice clear but warm. Because someone once believed in me, over a spilled coffee. The reporter blinked, clearly not expecting that answer, but Emily just smiled again and returned to welcoming guests. Later, after the crowd thinned and the grand opening signs had been tucked away, Emily pulled off her apron and walked toward the front. Daniel was already waiting at their table, the same corner seat where everything began. Now it belonged to her, just like the dream, just like the bakery. She slid into the seat across from him, placing 2 mugs of hot chocolate between them. Thought you might want something that won't stain your shirt, she teased. Daniel chuckled, lifting the mug. Thank you. I've come a long way since coffee casualties. They sat in quiet for a moment, watching as Lily drew hearts in the steam on the window. I never told you, Emily said, but this place, it isn't just mine, it's ours. You gave me the courage to dream again. Daniel shook his head gently. All I did was stand still long enough for you to see what you were capable of. She leaned in. Still, you stayed. That meant everything. Daniel smiled, then glanced around. So, any regrets about spilling coffee on a complete stranger? Emily pretended to think. Well, I do miss that apron. It was my favorite. He laughed. I'm glad you spilled the coffee. She reached across the table, threading her fingers through his. I'm glad you stayed. Outside,